It was a cold December evening in Portland, Maine. The wind whistled softly through the tall pines near the rocky coastline, and the Harper house, a quiet haven by the sea, stood bathed in the pale glow of a distant lighthouse. Inside, Alex Harper, a renowned chef known for his artistry with flavors, sat alone in the stillness of his kitchen. The room, once filled with laughter and the aroma of family dinners, now felt hollow. Even the faint ticking of the kitchen clock seemed unbearably loud against the silence. On the polished oak table before him lay an untouched cup of tea and a piece of paper folded neatly in half. It wasn't just any letter. It was written in bright blue crayon, adorned with uneven stars and a few smudges of what looked like cookie crumbs. "Dear Mommy," it began, in the unmistakable handwriting of his 8-year-old son, Kevin. "I miss you every day. Daddy is sad too, even when he smiles. Can you send someone to make him happy again? I promise I'll try to help. Love, Kevin." Alex's throat tightened as he read the words for what felt like the 100th time. He had done everything he could to protect Kevin from the full weight of their loss after Rachel's passing, but it was clear his son carried a burden too heavy for such young shoulders. A sudden knock at the door jolted Alex from his thoughts. Kevin peeked in, clutching a small toy sailboat, a cherished gift from his mother. "Dad, are we putting up Christmas lights this year?" he asked, his voice hesitant but hopeful. Alex hesitated. "We'll see, buddy. Maybe tomorrow," he replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. As Kevin left, Alex leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. The house felt too quiet, too empty. That night, as the waves crashed softly against the shore, Alex made a silent promise. He would bring joy back into Kevin's life, no matter what it took. The following morning, Alex Harper stood by the large bay window of his home, watching the waves roll onto the rocky shore. He clutched Kevin's letter tightly in his hand, the words echoing in his mind. How had he let his son shoulder this sadness for so long? Alex's thoughts drifted back to happier times, when the house was alive with Rachel's laughter and Kevin's delighted shouts as they baked cookies together or built sandcastles on the beach. Those memories were like warm sunlight piercing the cold shadows of grief. But now, every corner of the house seemed to carry an echo of what they had lost. "Enough," Alex murmured to himself, his jaw tightening with resolve. He walked over to his phone and scrolled through his contacts, landing on the name of his longtime friend and business partner, Mark Weston. Mark had been with Alex through thick and thin, and Alex trusted his judgment. "Mark," Alex said when the call connected, "I need your help." "Anything," Mark replied without hesitation. "What's going on?" Alex hesitated, the vulnerability in his voice uncharacteristic. "It's Kevin. He's struggling. And honestly, so am I. I can't keep pretending everything's fine. I need someone who can help him. Someone's special." Mark listened quietly, then said, "I might know someone. She's great with kids, especially those dealing with tough emotions. Her name is Bennett. Want me to set something up?" Alex exhaled, a weight lifting slightly from his chest. "Yes, please, but make it discreet." Later that evening, as Kevin worked on a puzzle in the living room, Alex watched him from the doorway. The little boy hummed softly to himself, but his shoulders were slumped, his movements subdued. "I'll fix this, buddy," Alex whispered under his breath. "I don't know how yet, but I will." 2 days later, Alex found himself outside a small cafe in Portland, clutching a slip of paper with a name written on it. Bennett. The cafe on Alder Street was small but inviting, its windows frosted from the cold December air. Inside, the scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the sweet aroma of pastries. Alex Harper adjusted his scarf as he stepped through the door, scanning the room. His eyes landed on a woman sitting by the corner, her curly auburn hair pulled into a loose ponytail. "Mr. Harper?" she asked, standing as Alex approached. Her voice was warm yet steady, her green eyes filled with a quiet confidence. "Bennett?" Alex extended a hand. "That's me. Please, have a seat," Grace replied, gesturing to the chair across from her. As they settled in, Alex couldn't help but notice the open sketchbook on the table. its pages filled with whimsical illustrations of animals and children. "You're an artist?" he asked, nodding toward the sketches. "Of sorts," Grace replied with a smile. "I use drawings and storytelling to connect with kids. Sometimes it's the easiest way for them to express what they're feeling." Alex's curiosity deepened. "Mark told me a bit about you, but I'd like to hear it from you. What makes you want to help kids?" Grace paused for a moment, her smile softening. "I guess you could say it's personal. I know what it's like to feel lost and not have the words to explain it. Helping kids find their voice, it's become my way of making sense of things." Alex hesitated, then explained Kevin's situation, fumbling slightly over his words as he described his son's struggles. Grace listened intently, her expression serious but kind. "I understand," she said finally, "but I need to be upfront. I'm not here to fix anything. What I can do is create a space where Kevin feels safe to share and rediscover joy. If that's what you're looking for, I'd be happy to help." Alex nodded, her words striking a chord. "When can you meet him?" Grace smiled. "How about this weekend? I know the Portland Aquarium has a great interactive exhibit. It might be a good place to start." As Alex left the cafe, the weight on his shoulders felt a little lighter. The Portland Aquarium buzzed with activity that Saturday afternoon. Families wandered through the exhibits, children's laughter echoing off the glass tanks filled with vibrant marine life. Alex Harper and his 8-year-old son Kevin stood near the entrance, Kevin clutching his father's hand tightly. "Look, Dad," Kevin said softly, pointing to a giant tank where a stingray glided gracefully past. "Pretty cool, huh?" Alex replied, his voice overly cheerful. Kevin nodded but stayed close, his shoulders tense and his expression cautious. At that moment, Grace Bennett appeared, her steps casual yet deliberate. She carried a small bag slung over her shoulder and wore a bright scarf that stood out against the muted colors of the winter day. "Oh, I'm so sorry," Grace exclaimed as she accidentally bumped into Alex, dropping her bag. Kevin crouched down immediately to help pick up the scattered contents: finger puppets, colored pencils, and a small sketchbook. "Thanks, buddy," Grace said warmly, meeting Kevin's curious gaze. "Do you like to draw?" Kevin hesitated, then picked up a pencil shaped like a dolphin. "Sometimes," he mumbled. "Well, you've got great taste," Grace continued, holding up the dolphin pencil with a grin. "I'm Grace. What's your name?" "Kevin," he replied, his voice just above a whisper. "Nice to meet you, Kevin. This place is huge, isn't it? I'm kind of lost. Any chance you could show me your favorite part?" Kevin glanced at Alex for approval. When Alex nodded, Kevin cautiously led Grace toward a nearby jellyfish exhibit. As they wandered through the aquarium, Grace skillfully drew Kevin out of his shell. She marveled at the jellyfish with him, encouraging him to explain what he knew about sea creatures. At the hands-on tide pool exhibit, she let Kevin show her how to gently touch a starfish. The turning point came when Kevin stopped at a tank filled with small glowing fish. His voice, barely above a whisper, carried the weight of months of unspoken grief. "Miss Grace," he asked softly, "why does my heart feel heavy even though I'm not sick?" Grace knelt beside him, meeting his gaze. "Our hearts are special," she said gently. "They don't just pump blood, they carry all our feelings too. When we miss someone we love, our hearts get so full of that missing that it can feel heavy." Kevin's brow furrowed. "Does your heart feel heavy sometimes?" Grace placed his small hand over her heart. "It does. But you know what? That feeling reminds me how much love I still have. And love is like these little glowing fish. It stays with us, even when things feel dark." From a distance, Alex watched the exchange, his chest tightening. For the first time in months, Kevin's small smile seemed genuine, like a crack of light breaking through a stormy sky. In the days that followed their visit to the aquarium, Grace became a regular presence at the Harper house. She spent afternoons helping Kevin with art projects, storytelling, and even baking simple treats in the kitchen. Her warmth and patience began to ease the heavy silence that had lingered in the home since Rachel's passing. Kevin grew more open with each visit, his laughter returning in small, precious bursts. One evening, as Grace showed Kevin how to paint a wooden sailboat, Alex stood quietly in the doorway, observing. There was something about the way she interacted with Kevin, gentle, genuine, and attentive, that stirred a mixture of gratitude and curiosity in him. But questions lingered in Alex's mind. Why had Grace, a stranger until recently, chosen to invest so much of her time and energy into their lives? The answer came unexpectedly. One evening, Alex's mother, Margaret, approached him in the living room. "Alex," she began cautiously, "there's something you need to know about Grace." Alex set down his coffee, already sensing the gravity of her tone. "What is it?" Margaret hesitated before speaking. "I did some research. Grace's daughter Ava was involved in the same accident that took Rachel." Alex froze. "What are you talking about?" "Rachel saved Ava," Margaret continued, her voice trembling. "She saw the car coming and pushed Ava out of harm's way, but neither of them survived the impact." Alex froze, his breath catching in his throat. The room seemed to spin as he struggled to process the weight of her words. The weight of the revelation was crushing. That night, after Kevin had gone to bed, Alex confronted Grace in the kitchen as she cleaned up the remnants of an art project. "Why didn't you tell me about Ava?" Alex asked quietly. Grace turned, her expression filled with both sorrow and understanding. "Because I didn't want to add to your pain," she said softly. "Rachel was a hero. She saved Ava, even though," her voice faltered, "even though neither of them made it." Tears welled in her eyes as she continued. "Helping Kevin has been my way of honoring Rachel's bravery and Ava's memory. I didn't want to take anything away from what you're feeling. I just wanted to help." For a long moment, Alex said nothing, his heart heavy with the shared weight of their losses. But in that moment, he saw Grace not as a stranger, but as someone who, like him, was trying to heal. The community theater buzzed with excitement on the evening of the winter concert. Parents, friends, and neighbors filled the seats, their chatter echoing through the cozy space. Alex Harper sat in the front row with his mother, Margaret, both watching Kevin nervously as he peeked from behind the stage curtain, dressed as a shimmering star. "You'll be great, buddy," Alex had told him earlier, giving him a reassuring hug. Now, as the lights dimmed, Alex felt a swell of pride and a pang of emotion, watching his son prepare to step into the spotlight. The performance was a simple yet heartfelt story about stars learning the value of love and connection. Each child had their moment on stage, but it was Kevin's final monologue that brought the audience to tears. "Some stars," Kevin began, his small voice steady but filled with feeling, "shine so brightly that they light up the whole sky. And even when we can't see them, their light stays with us, forever in our hearts." The theater fell silent for a moment before erupting into applause. Alex wiped at his eyes, overwhelmed by pride and love for his son. Backstage, Kevin ran straight to Grace, who knelt to hug him tightly. "You did amazing," she said, her voice full of warmth. As the applause faded and the crowd began to disperse, Alex stepped onto the stage. Taking the microphone in hand, he addressed the room. "I'd like to say a few words," he began, his voice clear despite the emotion brimming beneath the surface. He turned toward Grace, who stood nearby, her expression one of surprise. "Grace Bennett didn't just bring joy back into my son's life. She reminded us both that love doesn't end, it grows, it heals." Then, to everyone's astonishment, Alex knelt before her, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. The room fell silent, the weight of the moment pressing on every heart. "Grace, I'm not asking you to replace anyone. I'm asking you to stay with me, with Kevin, as we build something new together." Grace's hands trembled, tears streaming down her face as she nodded, unable to find the words amidst the overwhelming surge of emotion. Tears welled in Grace's eyes as Kevin ran up, clutching her hand. "Say yes, Ms. Grace," he exclaimed. Grace looked at Alex, then at Kevin, and finally nodded, her voice trembling with emotion. "Yes." Cheers erupted as Alex slipped the delicate sapphire ring onto her finger, sealing the promise of a new beginning for their family. Christmas Eve arrived with a quiet magic at the Harper house. Snow blanketed the rocky shoreline, and the faint hum of holiday carols filled the air. Inside, the living room glowed with the warm light of a beautifully decorated Christmas tree, its branches adorned with handmade ornaments and strings of twinkling lights. Kevin, dressed in cozy pajamas, carefully placed the final ornament on the tree, a delicate crystal star that had belonged to his mother. He stepped back to admire it, a small smile spreading across his face. "Look, Dad," he said, turning to Alex. "It's perfect." Alex knelt beside him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "It is, buddy. Just like your mom would have wanted." Grace entered the room, carrying a tray of steaming mugs of hot chocolate, her smile bright and genuine. Margaret followed close behind, her usual reserved demeanor softened as she held a plate of freshly baked cookies. "A toast," Margaret declared, raising her mug, "to Rachel and Ava, and to the new memories we're creating together." "To family," Alex added, lifting his mug. Kevin looked at Grace, his eyes shining. "And to stars that never stop shining," he said softly. Grace knelt beside him, wrapping an arm around his shoulders as they all clinked their mugs together. Later that night, after Kevin had gone to bed, Alex and Grace stepped out onto the balcony. The world outside was still and serene, the snow reflecting the moonlight like a silvery blanket. "Do you think we're ready for this?" Grace asked, her voice quiet but steady. Alex took her hand, his fingers lacing with hers. "No one's ever fully ready for anything," he replied. "But together, I think we can handle whatever comes next. And that's enough for me." Grace leaned her head against his shoulder, her heart full. As the snowflakes drifted gently around them, the golden light from the Harper house spilled out onto the snow-covered garden, casting a warm glow. They stood in peaceful silence, knowing that this Christmas wasn't just a holiday. It was the beginning of a new chapter, built on love, healing, and hope.